Flosstube. My name is Becca and I'm SamBrie Stitches here on Flosstube and other social media. I am so excited to be here with Caroline from Off the Grid Needleart. This is a special edition of Interview with the Flosstuber. This has been, I think, a long time coming. We were just talking before the recording. I started this, I think, like 2.5 years ago. And I had messaged Caroline on Instagram, not thinking that I probably should just email. And she never saw the message. And a long time later, she saw it and here we are. So it's pretty cool. I really enjoy her channel. Caroline is very soothing to watch, at least for me. I really enjoy just listening to her talk. She shows beautiful stitching and her knitting. And now she has a separate channel for shop updates as well, which is pretty cool. And I'm sure she'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But it's so nice to just sit, relax, and listen and watch the beautiful projects. I don't knit, so that's kind of a fun part of the channel. I like when other crafts are kind of introduced in the videos too, because I kind of live through the other crafter. So yeah, if you aren't familiar, which I'm sure y'all are, but if you're not, I'll have all the links down below for all of Caroline's channels and the shop info and all that. So before we jump into the questions though, I was wondering, Caroline, if you'd like to talk a little bit about like yourself and the history of your shop and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, thank you. Well, thanks for having me, Becca. This was, Instagram is a funny thing that if we hadn't had a conversation before, then it's kind of got this secret little notifications, section. And if you miss it, you miss it.
Yep, I'm learning that too.
I think I messaged you about your health and, hoping that you were going to be on the mend soon. And that's when I saw this previous message and I thought, oh no, 2 years later. So better late than never. Thank you for having me on your show. This is exciting.
Thank you.
Yes, my son is very excited. He wished me luck this morning. He said,
that's sweet.
Mom, don't embarrass the family.
That's too funny. That's funny.
But so yeah, my name is Caroline, and I live here in London, Ontario, Canada. And I started recording Flosstube videos about 5 years ago. And then I started the business that's sort of attached with my stitching sort of interests, Evertote. And I started that back in 2000. I started that actually slightly before I started the Flosstube channel. So Evertote, I started up with my sister-in-law, Kathy, way back in 2017. And then the business grew quite quickly, and Kathy already had a full-time job. She is a high school music teacher. And she had a full-time job. And so we had to kind of make the decision quite quickly that, she didn't really have enough time. And so I took on the business full-time. So ever since then, I've been working at Evertote, and I moved it out of the home back in April of last year, 2021. And I now sell, I'm the exclusive reseller of all of the Leo and Roxy Flossco products. So overdyed cotton flosses and linens and Adas. And also I work quite closely with Jacob of Modern Folk Embroidery. And we work together quite a lot. So I'm very inspired by his work, his designs, and he loves our products that we carry. So it's been a lot of fun to work together. And just recently, my husband and my husband's name is John. We have 2 kids, by the way, Sarah and Nicholas. Just a little personal side note. Sarah is 21 and my son Nicholas is 14. And my husband John and I are taking on a Hearthside Craftworks, which is a stand business. It's a small stand business based in Calgary, Alberta, and they manufacture floor frames and lap frames for stitchers. Yeah, and they are I have owned a Mark II floor frame since like for the last 15 years, and it's been hands down my favorite frame that I've ever owned. And so we have just recently, we are purchasing the company, and my husband is traveling out to Alberta at the end of this month for John, the other John of Hearthside Craftworks. He's going to teach my John how to make the stands. And so my husband is going to become part of my business. We're going to work together, and he's going to manufacture the stands, and we're going to sell them through Evertotes. So yeah, that's pretty exciting.
That is huge. That is exciting. Wow, and that's funny because there's so many people that always are looking for good stands and stuff like that, and there's some take forever. It depends on how long it'll take, for manufacturing, but that's exciting.
Yeah. And they are beautifully made. They're handmade, solid oak. There's attachments for Q snaps, and I have to figure out, John, that's a bit confusing because the current owner, I mean, this is all happening actually this week that we're transferring the company. So it's kind of, and we've been working on this with John and Helen Wilkes of Hearthside Craftworks. We've been working with them for about the last month to 6 weeks on this, and they're excited that a husband and wife sort of team are taking it over. And they've built this business from the ground up. Helen's a stitcher, and her husband John came up with the idea of the stand for her, and he's been crafting these for the last 25 years, and they're beautiful. It's always been my favorite. One of my favorite cross stitch tools is my stand. And so now I've been joking for the longest time that I wanted to purchase a lap frame from Hearthside, but I already own some other lap frames, and I couldn't really justify the purchase. And so my husband jokes that this was a very expensive way for me to get a new lap frame. So yeah, so we're very excited. It's still brand new, and we're sort of working out all of the details, but we're very excited that this is kind of, we're continuing to grow. So
are you going to put it into Evertote, or are you just going to keep it separate with its company name still?
We are going to keep the name Hearthside Craftworks because we're not like, we're maintaining the product. It's going to be exactly the same.
Okay.
So it's going to be Hearthside Craftworks at Evertote.
Okay.
And so the sales for the stands will happen through my Evertote shop, and Evertote will handle all of the shipping, packaging, shipping, customer service, and that sort of thing. But my husband will be manufacturing them. He's transformed our garage at home into a workshop, and so yeah, we're ready to go and very excited. So he's got some learning to do. He's had a lot of experience with power tools. He built our cottage, so he's used to working with his hands. He knows those kinds of things, but he's never done fine woodworking. So he's spending a week out in Calgary, and John Wilkes is going to train him on everything that he knows. So yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure many people are going to be stalking the website now.
Well, we have a wait list. We do already have a wait list started, and people are welcome to email me anytime. So we hope to have pricing available in September, and we hope to start shipping by the end of October. But yeah, like you were talking about wait lists and things like that. Yeah, when these things are handmade, and you can only make a certain number of them every week, and there's only one man making them, so yeah, but I think they're worth it. It's a beautiful item. Yeah. So
I think us as stitchers, I think we have a lot of patience, most of us, because fabric dyers sometimes take 4 to 6 weeks, and floss sometimes is hard to get the dye. So I think people are pretty understanding for the most part.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, we've got some pretty great customers, I have to say. Right. It's been the last 5 years have really been a great pleasure. I've met a lot of people, and starting with Flosstube was one of the best things I ever did.
Well, that's kind of funny that you segued into that, because the first question is, why did you start a floss tube, and were there any particular motivations? So it's good time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It just works right in there. So shortly before, I think it was in February or March of 2017, I had joined together with two other girlfriends who were knitters, and we started a podcast called the Fiber Friends. And it was primarily a knitting podcast. And my friend Adrienne was she was dyeing some yarn. My friend Louise was a knitwear designer, and I was making bags with Kathy. And so we started this knitting podcast. And in fact, side note, the Fiber Friends still exists as a podcast. My friend Louise has continued it, but she is now recording the Fiber Friends with my other friend Cheryl, who is a bag maker also close to me, my needlecraft. So Cheryl and Louise have actually carried on the Fiber Friends podcast. So we recorded for a while, and I found that I'm primarily a cross stitcher. Knitting is secondary for me. I love knitting, but I am multi-project worker, and I work more on my cross stitch projects. And so I would find that we would get together to record, and I would have hardly any progress on anything that I was knitting. So I started bringing my cross stitch, and I found that there was never enough time to talk about all of our podcasts were already really long, and there was never really enough time to talk about everything that I wanted to say. And I was interested in meeting more cross stitchers as well. I'm very lucky. I had a solid community right here in London. I had a local needlework shop that I loved, and I met several really good friends through that shop. But when you're passionate about something, I'm sure Becca, you can never have enough people who get it, right? That sort of, I mean, it really is. You get it. It's a passion, and so that's why I thought, well, let's give it a try. So it was close to my birthday, and I thought, well, what the heck? Even if 10 people watch it, and I meet 10 new friends, then it was mission accomplished. So
I think that's how we all start out with our channels is, if anybody watches it, great. If not, give like a video diary of our stitching, basically.
That's exactly right. Because it's funny, right? Because I can look back at those first few videos and think, okay, well, I finished that project and that project, but those other projects are still in my whip pile.
I don't want to go back. I don't want to know.
Oh, it's really fun. It's really, I mean, if that kind of thing doesn't bother you, and I find it really fun to do that. So, yeah.
So how did you come up with your channel name for your floss tube then?
Well, I referenced before the cottage that my husband built. He built that on an island out in Georgian Bay, Georgian Bay is on Lake Huron in Ontario. Well, it's one of the Great Lakes.
Yep.
And so Georgian Bay has, there are thousands of these little tiny islands on it. It's actually a very unique and special place in the world. And way back in the 1960s, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law purchased 2 parcels of land on this particular island. And they built a cottage there back in the early 70s. And then, so my husband and I started dating when I was 16. So I've been going to this cottage since I was, for many, many years. And then after we had our children, my father-in-law gifted us the second parcel of land. And so my husband cleared the land, made the plans, and built the cottage. It's very small. It's a very simple place, but it is off the grid. We use propane and solar, and we run a generator for if the solar, if we've got 5 gray days in a row and we need to charge phones or things like that, we can run the generator. So I used to live there the whole summer, and I would be off the grid. So that's why.
That's so cool. I would love to do that. I think my husband and I will go away for like a couple of nights in a cabin near a mountain. And unfortunately, everywhere we go, we try to get off the grid. We still have kids, they're older, but they now have Wi-Fi and everything everywhere. Trying to get away from it. So,
Yeah. Now, I should come clean in that we definitely have internet. We definitely, we use our phones as hotspots. Yeah. And we do, because the kids were able to do, even at the beginning of of lockdown, my son was able to do virtual school from the cottage.
Okay.
So it's at times the connection has been better than others. And for a while there, it was very expensive. And in fact, it still is. We have very different internet. That's a whole other conversation. But in the States, you have a lot more choice, and I think a lot more flexibility with your pricing structure. Here in Canada, we don't have that luxury, and our services are provided by pretty large monopolies. And in fact, if you do a Google for recently, there was a large Canada-wide Rogers outage. It highlights some of the big problems with this, and our sort of, all of our structures being, dependent upon these companies that, 911 was down. It was pretty bad. So anyways, again, that's something, sorry, I tend to go in circles and talk about a whole pile of things. We'll get back there in the end. So yeah, we do have internet.
Well, that's good, because you don't want to be completely, I guess, cut off if you go and your kids don't or something like that. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did you learn to stitch, and how long have you been stitching?
Well, I just turned 48 years old, and back when I was a teenager, my mother took me to, I grew up in a small town, and there was a local museum, and they were having a display of folk toys and, sort of antique crafts and things like that. And so I think I was 14, maybe a little younger. I might have been a little younger. I might have been 12. And my mother took me to see what was available at the museum for an afternoon out, mother-daughter thing. And in the gift shop, there was a kit of a very simple chart, and the fabric and some floss and a needle. It was all kitted up to make a pincushion. And so she purchased it for me. And I think it probably took me 4 or 5 years to finish. And it's funny when I look, because I kept the chart, and I've actually restitched that little chart a few times. And there were errors in the chart. But of course, as a teenager, first-time stitcher, I wouldn't have recognized that they were errors. And so I vividly remember being very frustrated that something was wrong, and I couldn't figure out, because it was a geometric design.
Oh,
but I followed the pattern, and I couldn't see, because it was drawn by hand, and I couldn't really see where it had gone wrong. And so I remember being very frustrated by it. But years later, with some experience, I looked at it again, and I thought, oh, that's what I missed. So I was about in between 12 and 14, and now I'm 48. So that's how long I've been stitching.
Long time, yeah.
Long time.
Pretty cool. That's kind of neat that you stitched that same, pattern again. So you can probably kind of see, from your first one to, like your most recent one, how much your stitching has grown and your stitches and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's true. It was really fun. Yeah. I've always loved it.
So do you have a favorite project that you've stitched so far?
I thought about that. I'd be hard pressed to pick a favorite, because I think every new project that we're working on, or we have memories tied up with things that we've stitched, so the finished project, you might love something else better, but perhaps you were stitching on it during a really special time in your life. So I have the landmark tapestries and charts. So this is the one, I finished this last year at some point. So this is, it's a tapestry design, and it's one of 12. It's actually one of 6, but they duplicated the charts and just used different colorways. These charts are almost impossible to find. There's only one shop you can get them from that I know of, and that's CelticHobbies.com. It's an online shop down in the States. And landmark tapestries and charts. So it was around the same time that I got my floor frame, actually. At my shop, she had brought these charts in and she was displaying them, and there was nothing else like them at the time. There like everything else was, it was kind of that time before, because it's really interesting that it was right around then that I first read about Jacob of Modern Folk Embroidery. I read one of his very first articles in a cross stitch magazine that was about him. Mm-hmm. And he had some of his folk art pieces done in red. And so the article was full of photos of his red on white, very geometric, very, and those were the kinds of things that I thought, that's what I've always wanted to stitch, but I never knew and I couldn't find it, right? Mm-hmm. So these designs, I love geometric. I love, everything about it. I love having these in my home. So I've actually stitched 6 of them. I'm working on the 7th, and 5 of these are in my stairwell at home. They go up the stairwell at home. Those ones are for my daughter, and I've started the next 5 for my son. So,
that's cool. That's
yeah.
Cool.
So those are probably my favorite that I've done.
That's so neat. Yeah. Well, it's
beautiful. I had to pick another one. I'll be honest with you. I had to pick another one. The very first few pieces that I did, that I stitched with Leo and Roxy floss, because they're meaningful to me for that reason.
Yep.
So this is Distal Fink Heart. So that is a chart by Jacob, and this was the second full Leo and Roxy floss co project that I finished. And so the flosses are, the dark purple is wisteria and the lighter purple is iris. Oh. And I love the birds and I love the color. But this was the very first one that I did, this little guy here. This is Bird on a Grapevine. And that was the very first little project with Leo and Roxy floss that I did.
Oh, so that's such a pretty color too.
Yeah. So, favorite projects for different reasons, right?
I love projects that have special meanings. I think that's why I like asking this, is because a lot of people will say, their favorite is the project that they're working on at that time or whatever. But yeah, there's always got to be that one where you're working on it during like a special time or like a tough time or something that has a memory attached to it, and one that just is super special. So those are my favorites. Just the ones that have the so what do you enjoy most about stitching?
That's a tough one, because everything everything, right? And I'm sure you get that answer a lot, but I am definitely first and foremost a process stitcher. So for me, 95% of the enjoyment is in the doing. So choosing the project, choosing the supplies, the pattern, becoming familiar with it, taking the first stitch, the sound of the thread pulling through the fabric. It's calming, it's soothing, repetitive. So the relaxation aspect of it, the color, just the whole thought process of that goes into doing it. So, I'm well aware, because I get comments quite a lot from people who say, well, I could never have so many projects on the go at the same time, or, I could never, it must drive you crazy. Well, that's not my journey. My journey is in the pleasure of it. For me, this is my passion, it's my craft, and it's in the doing. And I have lots of projects up on my walls already, and lots of things finished into smaller things. if I just got to start and half finish another 50, 100 more projects in the next however many years, and they don't get finished, well, I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with my children not loving this craft. And I could have 100 more things on the walls, but I don't expect my children to love them. So why would I mind if they didn't love my stash or anything like that? Now, yes, there financially, you have to consider what you're doing, and choose wisely and do what you can afford. So yeah, but I think for me, it's the process.
Yeah.
Of everything.
On everything. Yeah. I think I love it. Somebody had referenced this, and I've always said it, is I love that we can just paint with floss, basically, like these X's turn into this beautiful piece that if you step away, some of them do look like paintings.
Yeah.
So that is just one of my most favorite things about stitching is, just watching it grow. So definitely.
Yeah.
So we're going to get out of stitchy talk a little bit. We're going to learn a little bit more about you. So what's your favorite genre of book or movie?
Well, here's where I make a little confession. I love sort of dystopian, post-apocalyptic fantasy, that kind of genre. That's kind of my favorite to listen to. I don't tend to watch a lot of movies anymore. I used to when I was younger, but I find now, because I'm usually so involved in stitching, I don't choose. I know that if I watch a movie, I'm going to be watching the screen. So if I choose a movie, I'm going to want to watch something that I've already seen before, so that I can focus on not watching and just listening. So I love that my husband and my son John used to watch a lot of tennis, and my son Nicholas has recently started watching football over the last couple of years, and I love it because I have very little interest in what's going on, but I love their interest. I love their enthusiasm, but it's perfect stitching television. So yeah. Post-apocalyptic. Throw in a zombie or two and I'm happy.
I think I'm the same way because I don't like if somebody's talking during the movie or if I haven't seen it, or I don't want to miss anything. So I'm like, if I'm going to watch a movie, I'm going to watch the movie.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's something that I watched a couple of times where I don't need to, to see it. That's why I think I like when I'm stitching, I just like to have Flosstube on, because every so often you look up when they show something, but all the talking.
Exactly. So. Yeah. Just a chat with a friend. Yeah.
So since you mentioned like zombies and all that kind of stuff, what fictional place would you most like to go to?
See, now here's where that's different, because actually the fictional place that I would love to go to the most is Luke's Diner in Stars Hollow. I always thought if I was going to go someplace, it would be Stars Hollow. I'd love to sit on the gazebo. I'd love to go to Luke's Diner and order a cup of coffee. So yes. So I will admit to enjoying Gilmore Girls a lot. I've watched it a few times.
Yeah, I've binge watched that. I've been sick. Yeah, I think I would love that too. I've always dreamed of like living in a small town like that where everybody kind of knows everybody. My husband grew up in a town like that in Michigan, and we lived there for a year, and it was like the coolest thing ever. So someday I have to get back to that. So yeah, that would be awesome, just to sit and drink coffee and just chit chat.
And watch the town go by, right? And your friends would stop by and have a cup of coffee with you, and we'd have a little cross stitch table in the corner, and
no, so I would have to convince him, but yes. So if you could choose to do anything for a day, what would it be?
Well, I love what I do already, so that's a hard one. my favorite way to spend a day off is to put on some comfy clothes and an audiobook and my stitching. So and but if you do that all the time, it loses this sort of specialness, right, of that feeling. So I'm fortunate that I love my work. So I love what I do. If a perfect day for me would be my family would be home, but they have their own things that they're doing, and we'd all have coffee and watch a movie together, one that we've already seen, so I can stitch. And then we go for a walk and come home and have a nice meal and a cup of coffee. And yeah, that's a pretty perfect day.
Yeah.
I'm very simple. I like simple things. And I'm at my most content when a day is like that.
Yeah. And I'm sure with everything that you have going on, you're constantly pretty busy, so having a day like that would be a nice.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, you know what's what.
So we touched on this a little bit, but if you want to kind of dive deeper into it, do you have other hobbies besides cross stitch?
Yes, well, knitting. I mean, really, other than cross stitch, knitting and sewing. Because I sew so much for work, I don't tend to sew a lot as a hobby, and I do wish that I had a little more time to do that. I'd like to make a few more quilts. I love English paper piecing. I would love to do some more of that. I've always wanted to learn how to crochet. I've tried a few times with very not great success, and so I'd like to spend some more time learning that. So no, audiobooks. And I used to be a really voracious reader from the time that I was very small, but cross stitch really sort of just overwhelmed that. And so in order to maintain that sort of love of reading, I've pretty much completely switched over to audiobooks, which I don't mind, but I think this last book that I've been reading, it's 2 years. It's going on 2 years, like physical book. It's been taking me because when I am not stitching, I'm going to be sleeping.
Yep.
So
yeah, I'm learning that too, because stitching is very time consuming. But trying to balance, because I had started quilting, I made my husband a quilt, and then I'm like halfway through one of my daughters. And then now with designing and trying to, stitch the models and do all this, trying to find a balance between other hobbies proves to be very difficult. So,
yeah.
So stitching the front on everything. So I think. So this is one of my most favorite questions is, how would your friends describe you? I love asking this because nobody would think about that,
That's a tough one. I think they would describe me as talkative. That would be the first one, because as an extroverted introvert, when I am with people, I'm very, very talkative. Frequently, Carrie, the dyer of Leo and Roxy Floss Co., she comes over a few times a week to the workshop, and we can easily lose an hour just because we're both very talkative. So yeah, talkative and easily distracted. I think those would be shiny. Yeah, exactly. Easily distracted. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So you had mentioned using stands for your stitching. So how do you prefer to stitch? Do you use the Q-snap or a hoop with the stands, or how do you do it?
Well, I used to only stitch with a stand and scroll rods. So sort of the Hearthside Craftworks setup. Q-snaps I would use, but I never really loved all the excess fabric in the Q-snap. So I will use a Q-snap if the design fits inside the Q-snap.
Makes sense.
I've tried hoops a few times, but I don't like the marks they leave on my fabric. And now I have really developed a love of stitching in hand for the lower count fabrics like 28s and 32s. It's really tactile and it's a really enjoyable experience to stitch in hand, 2 strands of floss, and sewing method. So I find now that really fits the bill. I love using the scroll rod system for my higher counts. So anything 36 and above, I'll use scroll rod and a frame, both lap and floor frame, and then in hand for anything smaller than that. I like Aida on a frame. I like Aida in a Q-snap. I find it doesn't have the same tactile feeling as linen. And so if I'm going to be stitching a design on Aida, I like that in a Q-snap.
Yeah. Yep, that's what I do with my Aidas. I use a Q-snap because well, I can't say I'm an Aida stitcher only anymore because I stitch on linen too, but
yeah.
Do you have a preferred like fabric count or anything, or do you just kind of whatever?
No, I love it all. I love it all. I've recently tried 46 count within the last 6 months or so, and wow, it's incredible. I mean, the tiny little detail that you can get with 1 strand of floss. So that's been really fun. I haven't tried anything higher than a 46 count. I'm totally keen to do that. But no, I love, like, for different purposes. I'm currently making a modern folk embroidery design to be turned into a cushion for my couch. And so 28 count makes sense because I'll end up with the size that I want, and I love it. So no preference. It's all good.
Love that. Love that. So do you have a favorite place that you've traveled to, and did you bring stitching along when you went?
Well, yes. My favorite place that I've probably ever traveled to is a tiny little island called Madeira. And it is, it's Portuguese, and it's off the northern coast of Africa. And my in-laws, my husband's family, they had, it's a very popular place for British tourism. And so my mother-in-law is British. My father-in-law is he was born in Namibia, which is a little country just up from on the west coast of South Africa. And he went to school in England. That's where they met. And so Madeira was always kind of, whereas snowbirds in North America would go to Florida, Madeira was always kind of the place that they dreamed of retiring to. And so they bought a tiny little condo in a larger building there in Madeira, and they had it for about 25 years. And so my husband and I, they allowed us to spend our honeymoon there.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's where we went. Yeah. So that hands down, that was my favorite place that I've ever traveled. But I will admit that I have a very, very special fondness for Scotland. John has family all over the world. And so when we've traveled in our marriage, we've usually gone to a place where there is family. And we traveled to Scotland for a family wedding. And it was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been. And I would love to go back there one day. Yeah.
We had a chance actually to go to Scotland. Some distant relatives that I'm friends with on Facebook are getting married in Scotland actually very soon. And they had just messaged us a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, if you want to, come on. Let me just drop everything. opportunity, but being sick and, all that other stuff and, financially giving us that short of notice. But that got me thinking because Scotland, man, that's one of the places, that I'd love to go to.
Yeah.
Someday.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I don't
Yeah.
doubt that. I do not doubt that. Someday.
Yeah. Someday, for sure.
Hopefully. So what can you not do without for your stitching? Like your favorite go-to must have, besides the basics of what we need to actually stitch.
Coffee. Coffee. Yeah. Coffee is number one. And I was just looking. Oh yeah. My other favorite thing that I find that I have throughout the house in my various stitching spots is a hand balm or lotion.
Okay.
I use a couple of things. This is probably my favorite hand cream. I think it's Cetaphil or Cetaphil. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's non-greasy. And so if I'm going to be stitching within a few minutes and I need hand lotion, but I also try to use it every time I wash my hands, very dry skin. And I find that this works really well. But because I have such dry cuticles, I find that a couple of times a day, I need to use an actual like lotion bar. This is one that I've had this for ages. The brand name is Lavishe lotion bar, but I mean, I'll use anything, any kind of lotion bar that's just a little bit more oomph to it than an actual cream. And then I'll rub that into my cuticles a couple times a day. And I find like that I've become really, I notice it when I don't use it. I'm really particular about it now because everything catches, right? So silk floss or any kind of floss just catches on your cuticles, and that drives me mad. So yeah, lotion and coffee. Those two things, and I'm a pretty happy girl.
That's so funny that you mentioned that because I'll be sitting on the couch at night and I haven't gotten to go get my nails done. You can see I'm missing polish on my nails. So because I've been sick and I just don't want to go do stuff like that. And so actually last night sitting there, I was stitching on my model and the floss kept catching and it would come off the needle. And I was so mad. And my husband caught on. He's like, did it come off the needle again? It's like, you take a break. The blood pressure is going to go through the roof. Take a break. I'm like, it's supposed to calm me. But it's
it's true.
Yeah. I use the lotion, but I should definitely try that cuticle thing. Also, I'm gonna.
And when you have dry skin, and especially with the cuticles, and if you just rub it in, I know Burt's Bees makes that one is one of my favorites. Burt's Bees cuticle cream, and it smells like lemon, and it's really nice. And that you just need a teeny little bit. A couple times a day, you just rub it right into your cuticles, and it really makes a big difference.
I'm going to try that for sure because I am losing my patience. I just need to get my nails done at some point, but I'm just not ready for that yet. So how do you decide on what you're going to work on next for your projects?
Wherever the wind takes me. I have no process. I mean, I do, we do a lot of, being that I work so closely with Jacob and selling the Leo and Roxy floss, a lot of the work that I do are usually for models of things that we carry in the shop. So I generally will try to bring charts in of things that I want to stitch. I know recently Carrie had done some one-of-a-kind linens that there was a chart that I had seen Jen Lee, Quirks and Stitches. She had done it with Lottie Dawes Witch.
Oh, okay.
And I had this one-of-a-kind linen, and I thought this linen would be perfect for that chart, and I really wanted to stitch it. So I brought it into the shop. So it was a little bit of a selfish motive, but I think usually if I see a fabric or a floss and I think, oh, that would be perfect for that chart, or I know that Jacob has something coming down the pike, or we've got a new collaboration with Macy, Quaint Rose Needlearts, coming out on the 15th. And we've done it on a linen that's been in the shop for a little while, but I haven't really promoted. And I think people are going to love it. Ellen Reed, my friend Ellen, does a lot of, see, I'm always teased. You ask what your friends would say of you, and this is exactly what they would say. They would say, Ellen, your friend Ellen, because I always say that, and it's a little embarrassing to hear myself say it. But anyway, she does a lot of the shop models. So when there's something that I really must stitch, then I have to tell her, no, you can't stitch that. I get to stitch this one.
That's funny. Yeah. Hey, don't feel bad about Ellen. She named me as one of her wives. And I tell everybody. So
my wife Ellen.
Don't you can just say my friend Ellen all you want.
My friend Ellen Reed, Max from Cross. Yeah. I name drop all the time.
Love it. She's awesome. I did an interview when she was stuck in quarantine, when she had gone to her mom's and she was in quarantine. That was fun. So before we get to the last question, because we are pretty much almost done, just curious if there is something that not many people know about you.
Well, there's my past work life. I think regular viewers, most of my regular viewers probably know this, but I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't know. It's kind of an oddball thing. I have a performance degree in flute. That's my background. I trained to be a professional flute player, and then I taught private music lessons I started teaching private music lessons when I was still in high school, and then I continued teaching throughout, and then that was really my first career until this business kind of took over. So yeah.
Cool.
I learned how to play the flute.
That's
I spent a lot of money to learn how to play the flute.
Funny, because my older daughter has always been in band through school. You know how they have here, at least they do. They have band through starting in 3rd grade up through high school that you can do something like that. She initially had started going to college on a music scholarship for flute and French horn. And then she kind of started thinking, this might not make me, much money. Just I think like halfway through her first year, because it was her freshman year, at a like a private college that cost a lot, but at least she had some scholarship. She decided to change her major because but she can write music and play it on the flute and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just now with how much everything costs, it just wasn't. So that's kind of neat.
No, it's very, very true. And I had a couple of high level students who were auditioning for performance degrees, and I said, it's my job as your teacher to make sure that you think about this carefully, because how are you going to pay your bills? It's all well and good. You're very talented. Clearly, you're very talented, and you're progressing well. And I think you're going to do a great job studying in school. But how are you going to pay your bills? Because if you're going to need to teach, you're going to need to teach. Do you see yourself being a teacher? Well, no, I don't. I don't like teaching. Well, how are you going to pay your bills?
Right.
I'm going to play my flute. Where are you going to play your flute?
Very many options. Yeah.
So actually, and that's another thing. I played a lot of weddings. I had a duo. Both my husband and I have always been self-employed since from day one. And so I had a classical guitar and flute duo. We were called Duo di Gala. And for about 6 years, we played a lot of weddings. We played a lot of weddings in the area. And that was a lot of fun. It was, people's happiest days, and everybody was dressed up and in a good mood. And that was really fun. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that would be neat, to be able to go and do that and experience different types of weddings and people and that kind of stuff. But
I
fun.
played Pachelbel's Canon a lot.
Maybe the repetition kind of thing. I don't know. I guess, musicians like Ellen, they sing the same songs at concerts and stuff like that. So, I guess repetition's not a bad thing.
After a while, it's a job. Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. Well, that's kind of cool. So we are on to the last question. And this is pretty much, I think, either my first or second favorite one, other than the friends question. It's, what's the best thing that has happened to you within the past couple of years? Because it's been a rough couple of years.
Well, I think I can compartmentalize that into, personal life and also Flosstube life, because my personal life, my daughter, silver lining of the pandemic, my daughter was right at an age where she was starting university, and I know that it was really hard for her, but we got more time with her than I think we would have if lockdown hadn't happened, if she hadn't had to live at home for those extra few months, however long. And yeah, it was really hard on her, and she missed out on a lot. So I recognize that that's a very selfish thing for me to say, but as parents of kids that we're really close to, it felt like a bit of a gift for us. And so that was actually really special. And my son, well, he was at an age where, he did okay. And we were really lucky, because I know virtual school was really bad for so many families. But for my son, it actually came at a time in his life where it was actually really good for him. We were one of the very few people that it was a good thing. And so a year of virtual school, and he thrived, which was good for us. But I totally recognize that was not the case for so many other families. Yep. Flosstube wise and business wise, I recorded daily videos during much of the lockdown. And for me, it was a way to get my head out of the news and the emotions behind what was happening, and the absolute, uncertainty of where we were headed and what was going to happen next. There was something to, okay, well, let's just focus on the next hour. Let's chat with some friends. Let's talk about stitching. It was really, it was comforting. So yeah, that was probably my favorite thing out of the last few years.
Yeah, you actually inspired me to, I did videos for a little while as well, because you were doing them, and it was amazing to receive the comments and, private messages from people, thanking me for doing these videos. Like, I was coming up with random stuff, like, here's my 18 guys, something, because I think we were all going through so much that it was the least that, we could do to do the daily videos and help ourselves, but help others. So
it was a common thread, right? And it helped you feel not quite so isolated.
Yep.
And there were so many who were terribly isolated, that it was heartbreaking, really. And so just being able to have that little bit of daily connection was, yeah, it was really meaningful. It was really, really meaningful.
And
I was, and I am. I'm very glad that I did that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, a lot of people are very glad that, daily videos were happening. And
Yeah.
I'm right there with you with the kids too, because my daughter was in college and she was having to go to Seattle via the ferry and all that kind of stuff. And when lockdown happened, they went online and she was home and her and I are close. She's the stitcher. Um, so it was nice to have that extra time together. And the same with my younger daughter. School went online and she had been struggling in person. Online school, amazing. She's still doing online school because they're still allowing it. And
Yeah.
she's a senior this year. And absolutely, she's getting A's in online schooling where she was struggling in person. So it was, it was amazing in that aspect, because that's why I like asking this question, because there was so much sadness, loss, negativity throughout this pandemic, that I always like to ask about just the bright spots in it, because we want to bring that out because it was rough for a lot of people. So yeah. So I completely understand from mom, because when you said that, I'm like, it was identical for me. And not to take away from anybody else's struggles with homeschooling and that kind of stuff, but my kids were older, so they kind of did their own thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. I just laughed because it's 2+ years in the making. And I'm glad we finally got to.
We did it.
It's funny because like one of the first that I had reached out to, and I was like, well, she's just really busy. But then I get the whole other messages because it'll show it, and then if you click on it, but you don't read the message, but you go, then your notification disappears and you forget. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it was gone. So thank you for not hating me that I hadn't responded. Oh my goodness.
Me, I was so excited.
Well, that's so nice.
But thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you're super busy with everything.
Oh, my pleasure. This was really, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to say bye to everybody on Flosstube.
Hey. Bye, Flosstube. See you soon.